And welcome to this meeting of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Welcome councillors, staff members, members of the public. Good morning and welcome, and anyone else who will be gathering with us today. I will now take us through the prayer. Right, okay. Any apologies today? Mr. Mohi's here. No apologies. Notices.
Yes, I have to leave at
12:30. Okay. Okay, no other notices. Thank you. Conflict of interest declarations. Confirmation of the minutes of the 14th of August. I'll just get a copy here. You've got a copy of those minutes? So no, we're good. All good to go. Okay. For accuracy, page 2, page 3. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Scott, seconded. Councillor Douglas. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Any matters arising from those minutes?
Mr. Chair, at that meeting I requested the expressions of interest for the second time for the return of a scheme, and I still haven't received that.
Okay.
So could somebody make a note of that, and could I please have a copy of that?
Ms. Lambert?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The expression of interest.
There was just a question asked for the Ruataniwha scheme. Okay, no other matters arising. General business items.
The Andy McFarlane meeting.
Just hang on. Sorry, excuse me. What was that again? Sorry.
The Andy McFarlane meeting.
Andy McFarlane meeting. Okay. Other Councillor Gilbertson.
Council response to signs on the Petongata and the Tamu Bridge in Central Hawke's Bay.
Okay.
Well, signs saying that the river's toxic.
Thank you. Any other general business? Right. Action items. Item number 6, page 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, councillors. The action items, the first one is just a process one that will be included as required, the attachment of emails around public information requests. The update for councillors on progress with the Dalton Street remediation work is coming to council next Wednesday for the Corporate and Strategic Committee agenda. Action item, the next action item down, update on work programs associated with taking forward the use of alternative methods of managing irrigation water resources. This is a response to submitters who lodge submissions with the annual plan. I'll ask Mr. Maxwell just to make some comment on that, just in terms of timing. The intention had been that a report come back via the Environment and Services Committee meeting in November, but there's been a request that this be expedited and that the work be detailed out for you sooner than that. So before Mr. Maxwell speaks, if there's any councillors wish to comment, and he can respond to that.
Okay. Good point. Any questions? Councillor Douglas. With microphone, please.
Sorry, it's
It's perhaps not a question. I think it's probably better if I could wait for Mr. Maxwell to outline what it is, because there's been a number of conversations I've had with, and others have had with him, to move this forward if we can, and a proposed amendment to the motion.
Any other questions? Sorry. Or in regard to any of these action items? Before we get on to the first three, before we get on to the screening at Guppy Road, Councillor Rose.
So if you could just perhaps give some guidance, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to discuss this and we're going to move a resolution out of this, is this where it's heading? Do you intend to pass something by council? Or?
I'd be interested to. Action items are there until they're completed, normally. But if Mr. Maxwell does have some timelines, perhaps, and a work program that we could hear, that would probably be a better start, I would think.
You're anticipating a discussion around those, Mr. Chairman, are you?
Well, I'm
you're going
open,
to allow that? Or?
I'm open to questions and comments from my colleagues, but
Okay.
we're in action items at the moment, so perhaps to help, if Mr. Maxwell could take us through how he sees this work program progressing and what sort of timelines and what sort of progress has been made.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question on the building. Do you want to have that first or later, or what?
Oh, we can come back to that. Yeah.
So, yes, I have, through you, Mr. Chair, have discussed this with Councillor Douglas, and I guess the summary is that much of what you see on the screen before you, we are actually doing or have done with irrigators over the last summer. The question is whether we can bring back to Council a report that details what we are doing and what we are proposing to do with the irrigator community around the issue of gaining most efficiency or effectiveness out of water available, and the short answer to that is yes. We can certainly bring that together in terms of providing Council some clarity about what we are doing with the irrigator community at the moment. I would note that this conversation hasn't stopped since the drought concluded last year, so we have continued to have engagement with the irrigator community on this issue and others over the winter. And there are a number of options still before us. I guess from my perspective, what we are doing is trying to provide an environment to allow the irrigators to help themselves as best as they can within the rules and limits that we have currently. And so we are looking at every option to do that. And I would see this report simply being a summary of that in terms of what we're doing, what we're proposing to do, and probably most importantly, what the irrigators can do for themselves. So yeah, quite happy to bring that with sort of speed back to the Council to give some clarity and some certainty about what we're doing, and certainly happy to hear of any alternatives that perhaps haven't been considered if they exist.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, I think that the concern that we have as staff is that there's been quite a reasonable amount of publicity recently about that suggests that there are actions that could be taken by this council that they haven't, that are actually illegal, and that's the reason why the council hasn't taken it. And I think that this report also needs to put those kind of misconceptions to bed as well. We have developed our land and water strategy. We've clearly signalled that the Ngāwaroro is the next cab off the rank in terms of the managing it through a plan change process. We've identified the limitations for that as mainly being around water use efficiency, and we've been working hard with water consent holders in that area for the last 2 to 3 years to be able to begin to address that. part of the issue, I guess, is around individualism and the lack of a need to engage with council until the drought came along. And so I think that the knee-jerk responses that I've seen out there in the media about what council didn't do and hasn't done, and individual councillors haven't done, is completely incorrect. And I think that this report needs to address that as well.
What would the timing be for such a report? I mean, you could give us an update of where you are today, no doubt, but are there major milestones that need to be met and passed to get progress on this issue? I.e., this discussion now moves to this phase, and that's a milestone point, and we're moving ahead, or is it not quite as clear-cut as that?
I think it's reasonably clear-cut on a number of fronts, because as I alluded to earlier, we have been in our continuing dialogue with the irrigator community around this stuff. As Mrs Lambert pointed out, there are some practical realities and stark facts that I will put to this report that council can consider, the world that we have to operate within, the legislation we operate under, the plans that we have. I can certainly outline what we've done and what next steps are required, but I'd just reinforce that many of the next steps are actually sitting in the hands of the irrigator community, and reinforce the concept of moving away from the thinking of an individual right to a common good is critical to a lot of this. Notwithstanding that at the moment we have an environment where we have limits we have to work within, and we are looking at every option to provide them with a way to get access to water within the limits. So by the next council meeting, or earlier if you wish, I mean I can turn this round as rapidly as the council desires to provide an outline of where we are and what the next steps are. And where we are will be, the harsh reality of, like I say, the world we live in and the legislation and plans and policies that we have in front of us.
Questions? Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman. Mr Maxwell, do you intend in your report to elucidate the flow of conversation and information and correspondence you've had between the irrigators and the council over this past 6 or 7 months when the angst has been at its highest? Because I think there's some misconception out there that council didn't respond to the needs of the irrigators and were tardy in their actions. So will your report cover these issues?
Council certainly can, and I'll make a point of doing that to ensure that with transparency we clearly understand what was asked of us over the last summer and how we responded, because I think that would be really useful.
Councillor Curt.
Just a matter of process, Mr Chairman. I envisage that the report will come back as a decision item to receive the report, as opposed to a report back on an action item. Is that the process we'll follow?
Yeah, on the subject, Mr Chairman, 4 or 5 years ago when Darryl Liu was here, we talked, based in the aftermath of those droughts 7, 8, 9, we talked about streamlining and getting more efficient, and one of the things was aggregating consents. And I know the Waipawa Golf Club were furious because they paid $4,000 for a consent that they used sparingly, and they were advised that there'd be work would be done to aggregate consents and join them all in and cooperate between sectors. How much of that work has been done? Has the Waipawa Golf Club or people like that been approached by our staff over the last 4 years to streamline the thing? And the conversations come up against in my area where between the Tama and Tongata bridges they've been the same problem where the consents are expensive, they're used sparingly, that the allocation is never fully used. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, council 4 years ago talked about coming to you guys and talking about this, but has that happened, or in the last 4 years has any progress been made? Through
you, Mr Chair, I can't comment on that specific case because I'm not aware of that. I would make the point though that this report will traverse that issue generally for the region, and
that's not my question, Mr Chairman.
And how we will respond to the issue of global consents.
Has been any action in the last 4 years, and that you can answer that. Perhaps the acting chief executive can.
No, I can't either.
Well, there has been.
We can find out the information for you
Obviously.
on the Waipawa Golf.
I think the question's been answered, Mr Chairman.
There has been water, obviously plenty of progress around water management in the Tukituk catchment generally in the last 4 years.
Councillor Scott.
Those taxes that are tied to the Narora, And at the time of the consents, one of the alternatives that was discussed was the possibility of finding a confining layer further down. Have any deep bores been investigated?
We haven't undertaken any investigation in that sense.
Are you aware the irrigators have salt water?
We are not aware of any investigation that would give us any clarity around that. I guess the development of the coupled surface groundwater model to support the tank process is integral to that question, because that's obviously one of the key questions. Is there a resource below the current unconfined aquifer that might alleviate this pressure? And that's part of the investigation that we've got underway at the moment. But I'm not aware of any pre-existing or new bores that might help us understand that.
Thank you. Councillor Remersall, did you have a question? I thought I saw a hand down there. Councillor Rose.
Yeah, one further, and it's not directly related to irrigation, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Maxwell, but I wonder if Mr. Maxwell would also perhaps put it as a side issue to his report. There's been considerable angst over the difficulty that some growers have with having two consents off one bore, the frost and irrigation consents. And I know I've been working with staff recently to get some of these consents married into one consent off one bore, and there seems to be a lack of knowledge amongst the irrigators that can be done. I wonder if that could be elucidated in the report, that process is available. I know there is a cost to it, but I think that needs to be brought out into the open, or brought into the public eye.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbertson, you had a question on the building?
It was pretty obvious some months ago that probably 99% chance that Herbert Construction will go into liquidation. Did council have any contingency plans at that stage to meet that when that happened, if that happened, or was it we just waiting
No,
to see?
yes, we did. We were aware that if Herbert Construction did go into liquidation, there was a number of parties that they had joined to their claim who would have no longer been, as it were, accessible to us, and so we joined those 5 additional parties to our claim prior to Herbert's going into liquidation, so that they are now, we're now directly dealing with them, and Mr. Adey will give you a more detailed update on that next week.
And Guppy Road, the unsightly Guppy Road.
Mr. Atkins promises me that the planting has started, so as of Monday. So there's certainly landscaping plans in place to try and provide a visual barrier between the expressway and the back of our property there.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Councillor Gilbertson.
Will there be a plan to landscape the Central Hawke's Bay depot, because it might be considered unsightly when you drove down the main road as well?
We could ask, yes.
We're going to waste money, we might as well do it properly, Mr. Chairman.
Chair.
Councillor Remersall.
Regarding the actions items, the item on climate change, the recommendation that Council passed on the 29th of May, and nothing has happened about that. It was I was expecting something at the Environment and Services Committee meeting last week, and I'm just very concerned that this is going to be left in abeyance. At the very least, we need to have to know when that is coming, when there's going to be action on that. I'd like to know who's responsible for it, who's taking charge of it, and I'm very disappointed that nothing has happened this far, because I think it's a very important and urgent issue, and we did agree as council to do something about it.
Well, let's get an answer. I'm not sure nothing's happened, but
as I outlined to you, Councillor, in your email, it still remains on Council's work programme. As with every report or work that's undertaken, there has to be priority given. It will be in the responsibility of a member of the science team to prepare that report via Mr. Maxwell. But at this stage, other work issues have taken priority. You asked in your email what they were, and I'm sorry I hadn't replied. But a number of the staff are currently just finalising their evidence for the Board of Inquiry hearings, and so they have not been able to start looking at other work, new work. They have a work program in place that you've approved through the annual plan collectively, and so this work was in addition to that. And has to be slotted in. So our aim is to have a report to the first Environment and Services Committee meeting of the new council, which will be, I think, scheduled, if you adopt the schedule, for November.